Helicopter lost during volcano tour. Tourist helicopter vanishes over Japan's Mount Eso. Wreckage found inside active volcano crater. A tourist helicopter carrying 3 passengers has disappeared during a sightseeing flight over one of Japan's most active volcanoes, with wreckage later spotted inside the crater, raising fears of a fatal accident. Now we take a deeper look and break down this entire story on the AI podcast.
Okay, so picture this. You're on vacation in Japan. You're at a place with maybe the most disarming name I've ever heard, the Aso Kugli Dominion.
It does sound like a place where nothing bad could ever happen.
Right. It sounds like, I don't know, a petting zoo.
Yeah.
And it is a zoo, but it's also the launch pad for something that is decidedly not cuddly. You decide to hop on a helicopter for a quick thrill ride.
Just a 10-minute loop.
Exactly. A 10-minute loop to see Mount Aso. And not just the mountain, but the active crater, the raw, boiling earth.
It's the ultimate contrast, isn't it? You go from this safe, controlled little park to staring down the throat of an active volcano.
So you board the chopper, you buckle in, the rotors spin up, you take off, 10 minutes go by, then 20. The ground crew is, checking their watches. And the helicopter just, it never comes back.
It's a complete nightmare scenario. But for 3 people, just this past Tuesday, it was very real.
Today we're doing a deep dive into the Mount Aso helicopter crash. And look, I don't want to just read the headlines here. We know a helicopter crashed. It's tragic. But when I looked at the details you sent over, I got stuck on the how. We have a machine that's used everywhere in tourism, a pilot who's been flying since the Reagan administration, and a safety record that. Well, I'll get to that.
Yeah.
The how is exactly what we need to focus on, because on paper, this flight should have been routine. Utterly routine. But when you mix extreme terrain with, let's call them human factors, routine can go out the window very, very quickly.
Let's start with the machine itself, because the reports keep calling it a Robinson R-44. To me, that sounds like a droid from Star Wars or something, but you flagged this. Why? Is this a sketchy helicopter?
Not sketchy, no, but the context is everything. The Robinson R-44 is, you can think of it as the Toyota Camry of the helicopter world.
Okay.
It's the most popular civilian helicopter in history. It's light, it's relatively affordable to run, and it has incredible visibility for passengers. Tour operators love it for that bubble canopy. So it's the standard workhorse. That sounds like a good thing.
Usually, yes, but it's a light piston engine aircraft. This isn't some heavy twin-turbine military machine that can just punch through anything. Because it's so light, it gets tossed around by turbulence. And more importantly, it's flown under what we call VFR.
Visual flight rules, meaning you have to be able to see where you're going.
You have to see the ground, you have to see the horizon.
Right.
These helicopters, they generally aren't equipped with the sophisticated autopilot and instrument systems you'd find on, say, an airliner. So if you lose visual contact with the world outside,
You're in serious trouble.
instantly.
Hold that thought on losing contact, because that feels like the smoking gun. But let's talk about the human element first. Whenever a crash like this happens, my first thought is, some rookie pilot who panicked. But that is not the case here, is it?
Not even close. The pilot was 64 years old. He had roughly 40 years of flying experience.
40 years. I mean, do the math on that. The guy has probably flown more hours than I've spent sleeping in my life.
It's a lifetime in the cockpit, really.
So here's my question, and I want you to be honest. If you've got a guy with 40 years of experience flying the Toyota Camry of helicopters that he knows like the back of his hand, how does he end up inside a volcanic crater? Can experience? Can it actually backfire?
That is a phenomenal question. And the answer is an uncomfortable yes.
Yeah.
In aviation safety, we have this concept called the normalization of deviance.
That sounds ominous.
It is. Imagine you cut a corner on a safety procedure once. Nothing bad happens.
Yeah.
So you do it again. Still nothing. Over a career of 40 years, you might fly into sketchy weather hundreds of times and get away with it every single time.
So your brain just stops seeing it as a risk?
It stops registering as a life or death decision and just becomes another Tuesday. His experience might have actually told him, I can handle this fog, I've done it 1,000 times before, right up until the moment he couldn't.
Complacency.
We call it complacency, but it's really confidence disguised as safety. A rookie pilot might see a cloud bank and say, no way, I'm scared, I'm staying on the ground. A veteran might see the same cloud and think, I know this terrain, I can sneak under it.
That is terrifying. So let's look at the day itself. It's Tuesday, 10:52 a.m. Who's on board with him?
It was a private charter, 2 tourists, believed to be from Taiwan, a man in his 40s and a woman in her 30s.
Just a couple on vacation. Probably thought this would be the highlight of their trip.
And we know the diplomatic channels are already open. The Kumamoto Prefecture governor is in contact with the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office. So it's already an international incident.
The thing about the timeline that confuses me, this wasn't the first flight of the day, was it?
No, it was the third. The operator, Takumi Enterprise, confirmed the chopper had already done 2 loops that morning without any issues.
Okay, so at 10:00 a.m. it's fine, at 10:30 it's fine. Then at 10:52 they take off and they just vanish. What changed? Can weather shift that fast on a volcano?
Incredibly fast. We're not just talking about a weather front moving in. Mountains create their own microclimates. You get wind hitting the slope, it gets forced upward, it cools, and instantly condenses into fog.
And this brings us to the conditions. The reports mention cloudy with thick fog, but they also said whiteout. Now, when I hear whiteout, I think of a blizzard, not a volcano in Japan.
This is where we need to get a little technical about what whiteout means to a pilot. It's not just, I can't see very far. It's a total loss of contrast of the horizon.
Explain that.
Okay, imagine you're sitting inside a big white sphere. The floor, the ceiling, the walls, all white. And the light is perfectly flat. You literally cannot tell where the corners are. You can't tell up from down.
Okay, I get it.
Now put yourself in a vibrating metal bubble moving at 100 miles per hour. Inside that crater, you've got white volcanic steam mixing with white fog. The horizon, that line dividing Earth from sky, it disappears.
So you don't even know if you're flying level or banking.
You might feel like you are flying straight and level. But your inner ear, your vestibular system, it's so easily tricked without a visual reference. We call it spatial disorientation. You could be banking 30 degrees straight into the crater wall and your brain is screaming at you. Everything is fine, we're level.
Until you see the rocks. And the R-44, like you said, doesn't have a computer to say, hey, dummy, you're tilted.
It has basic instruments, of course, but if the pilot is fixated on looking out the window, trying to find the ground, by the time he looks down at the dashboard, it can be too late.
And we have a witness for this, right? The guy on the ground.
Yes, a watchman at the crater observation post. He told the media that the area was suddenly just engulfed. He said, and I'm quoting, "Visibility was poor and everything turned completely white."
That phrase, everything turned completely white, it's chilling. It sounds like they just flew into a void.
And we have the digital footprint to prove it. The police confirmed the GPS signal was last detected right near the crater, just before it cut out.
So they didn't crash on the way there. They made it to the destination, the trap snapped shut, and they went down.
Exactly. And the location of the wreckage, it confirms the violence of it all. They weren't found on the rim. They were found inside the Nakade crater.
Let's talk about that drop, because inside the crater, it sounds vague. Are we talking about a gentle slope?
No, not at all. We're talking a near vertical descent of about 190 to 230 feet below the rim.
That's a 20-story building.
Basically, yeah. And it's not landing on soft earth. This is jagged volcanic rock, ash, vents. The authorities described the aircraft as completely destroyed. The cabin itself was obliterated.
God, that's just devastating. And usually with these crashes, we hear about the golden hour, right? Getting rescue teams in immediately. But that didn't happen. Why not?
This is what makes volcanic accidents so uniquely difficult. The crash was Tuesday morning. They had to suspend the search late that same day. They couldn't get to them.
Because of the terrain.
Terrain, visibility, but the main thing, the gas.
The volcanic gas.
Remember, this is an active vent. It's constantly spewing sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide. High concentrations of SO2 aren't just smelly, they're toxic. They burn your lungs. If you send a rescuer down a 200-foot cliff into a cloud of toxic gas where they can't see their own hands,
You're just creating more victims.
you are. It's a horrible catch-22. You need to save the people in the wreck, but the mountain itself is actively trying to kill the rescuers. They had to wait.
And wait for what? The wind to shift?
For the wind to shift or for the emissions to drop. They were scheduled to resume Thursday morning, but it all hinges on the volcano's mood.
It really emphasizes that this isn't Disneyland. We treat nature like a backdrop for our photos, but Mount Aso erupted in 2021, right?
It did. A major eruption in October 2021. Set a pyroclastic flow that's hot ash and gas racing down the slope.
That is so recent.
Very. This isn't some dormant giant. It's an active beast. And flying a light helicopter into its mouth is, well, it's inherently high-stakes poker.
Which brings me to the operator, Takumi Enterprise. Now, I want to be fair. Accidents can happen. But when I looked into their history, I just got this sinking feeling. This wasn't their first bad day.
No. And this brings us right back to that idea of normalization of deviance,
Yeah.
or some people call it drift into failure.
What happened before?
Just last year, in 2024, another sightseeing helicopter from this same company, Takumi Enterprise,
Yeah.
also flying over Mount Aso, was forced to make an emergency landing.
And people were hurt.
Yes, all 3 people on board were injured. Now, in aviation, an emergency landing that results in injuries is a major, major event. It is a huge red flag.
So you have a serious incident in 2024 and then a fatal crash, same location, same company, a short time later. That doesn't feel like a coincidence.
It forces you to look really hard at the safety culture. After that 2024 incident, did they say, wow, that was close, we need to significantly raise our minimum weather standards? Or did they say, well, the pilot handled it, let's just get back to business?
It feels like the latter. Because if they had raised their standards, would that helicopter have ever launched into a whiteout on Tuesday?
That is the $1 million question the authorities are going to be asking. Takumi Enterprise has grounded all their helicopters now, of course, and the local government is reviewing all the safety protocols for flights near the crater.
It feels a bit like shutting the barn door after the horse is bolted.
Unfortunately, aviation regulations are often written in blood. It takes a tragedy like this to tighten the rules. Maybe now they'll mandate instrument-rated helicopters only. Maybe they'll set a hard limit on cloud ceiling.
Maybe they'll just stop flying into the crater altogether.
That's possible, but unlikely. The demand is just too high. People want that view.
And that's what I struggle with. You have 2 tourists who just wanted a cool experience. They trusted the pilot. They trusted the company. How can a regular person possibly know if an operator is actually safe?
It is incredibly difficult for a consumer. You see a helicopter, you see a pilot in a uniform, you just assume it's safe. You don't check an operator's accident history on some government database before you buy a ticket at the zoo.
No, you're thinking about whether you have enough battery left on your phone for photos.
Right, and that creates this huge asymmetry of information.
Yeah.
The passengers didn't know the specific limitations of a Robinson R-44 in a volcanic microclimate, but the pilot did. The operator did.
And the pilot, despite his 40 years, made a decision to push into that whiteout or got trapped by it. Either way, the system failed those passengers.
It did. And I think we need to stop looking at experience as some kind of magic shield.
Yeah.
Experience helps you handle a crisis, but a good safety culture prevents the crisis from ever happening in the first place.
That is such a key distinction.
If the culture was, we don't fly if there's any doubt, then the helicopter stays on the ground. The pilot might be grumpy, the tourist might be disappointed, but everyone goes home alive.
It's the difference between being a can-do organization and a safety-first organization.
Precisely. And can-do gets you killed on a volcano. The mountain doesn't care how many flight hours you have. Physics is undefeated.
As we wrap this up, I keep coming back to this idea, this intersection of extreme tourism and safety. We have submarines going to the Titanic. We saw how that can go. And sightseeing flights into active volcanoes. We trust technology like GPS and veteran pilots to navigate these insane conditions.
Right.
But where is the line? At what point does an exciting view become an unacceptable risk? And when you're the tourist standing there at the ticket counter, how can you possibly know which one you're really signing up for when you buckle that seatbelt?
That's the question you have to ask. Is the thrill worth your exposure to the holes in the cheese?
A dark but very necessary thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, ask the hard questions, and please stay safe out there.
Okay, one question for you. Should stricter regulations be imposed on sightseeing flights in hazardous zones? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.